Hello and welcome, Mr. Connoisseur here, and welcome to Mr. Connoisseur Movies and Games, where each week we discuss the movies and game franchises that we love. Welcome to episode 1. So I'm talking to Mr. Chatty, was it? Or Chatty Connoisseur?
I'm the Chatty Connoisseur, of course.
Brilliant, got to keep those stalkers at bay. And the the topic we're discussing today is Sonic the Hedgehog.
I think it's probably fair to say it's probably one of our favourite franchises ever.
Yeah.
I'll probably say.
It's definitely one of the ones I've had the most memories of. Probably, starting from childhood and going through it. So, yeah, I'd agree with that.
And the funny thing is, even if we speak a lot about Sonic a lot, general conversation, but I don't think I ever really discussed about how you or I really got into Sonic the Hedgehog. What was your earliest memories of Sonic?
So my earliest memories with Sonic the Hedgehog is actually my earliest memories with gaming. So when I first got into Sonic the Hedgehog, like I say, my family didn't really have the most money when I was growing up. We weren't poor, but we never really had much money for luxuries and all that. And I was at the Saver Centre. Do you remember that? Is it going towards Wimbledon?
I know you're thinking of. Yeah, I know you're thinking of Saver Centre, which I think it's now the Sainsbury's and the Marks and Spencer is the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Well, I went there, and there was a competition. So there was a competition, and I can't remember what the competition was. It was basically that was it. It was fairy tale characters and what countries they originated from. And with the help of my older sister, I filled that in, sent it off, and the prize, which I won, was a Mega Drive. The prize was totaled as a Mega Drive and a single game, and the game was Tasmania. But when it came through, and obviously I was thrilled, it obviously had Sonic the Hedgehog 1 as boxed in with the Mega Drive as well. So it actually came with 2 games. So
was that the original? Sorry, was that the original Mega Drive?
Yes. The original Mega Drive, but it was still boxed with Sonic the Hedgehog 1, which is a big part of why that game became such a huge seller, why that console did, and why Sega ended up becoming the force they did for a while in the 90s. Before they just made horrible decisions and threw it all away.
Yeah.
But then I remember then having that, and I played Tasmania a lot, but I played Sonic more. It was infinitely more compelling to me. And I absolutely loved it. And it was set up in my brother's bedroom for some reason. I don't know what was up in his bedroom since it was my console. Playing it through. Got stuck a lot on the marble zone, as everyone often did with them, just crushing things. I remember my brother when he first beat Dr. Robotnik, as he was known in the West for the longest time, and still kind of is.
Well, the films are sort of helped to combine. We'll go into and talk about the films, but I think the films helped to combine that, didn't they? With Eggman with the East and Robotnik over here. So Eggman became a bit of a nickname in the end now, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, we're going down to that more because really the way we approach that subject is Sonic Adventure. That's where that sort of all got combined. But yeah, that was the first experience I had of Sonic, and of course the cartoon Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, the wacky one with Scratch and Grounder.
Oh yeah, was that the Freedom Fighters or something?
No. That was the grim and gritty one with Sally.
Right.
No, Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog was just a really crazy slapstick, off the wall comedy show when it was him and there was these badniks, and the Robotnik in that was probably one of the most funniest characters I've ever seen in fiction, and it was just insane. It's an insane show, and I'd strongly recommend it. What about you then? How did you first get introduced to Sonic?
I think for me, when I was living with my parents in like an old house it was like a relatively newly built council estate in a house, and next door there was a young couple. Well, they were young then, and the husband there, he had the original Mega Drive, like one you had. and he had Sonic on it. I think it was the original Sonic. And obviously, I grew up with computer games, so my parents had like the Sinclair Spectrum. We used to play games on the Amstrad 1512.
Oh, you had that, did you? Was it any good?
Oh yeah, yeah. There were games on the Amstrad where you had, which I remember, things such as Digger and Alley Cat. And if you go online, you can actually see those games. People have played them; they seem to be well remembered.
Oh, well.
Yeah, but the Amstrad 1512 was good, and we had the Sinclair Spectrum. So with that, I played, the classic games such as Pac-Man, which looked really ropey compared to how it looked on other systems.
Yeah.
And then moved on to the NES, so the Nintendo Entertainment System. So that would have been Mario, for example, and Duck Hunt, and other games. DuckTales was another big one, and then obviously went next door and then saw this other console, Sonic the Hedgehog, which I've heard of but didn't know too much about. When I saw it and I played it, the graphics look infinitely better. Sonic was faster. He had that cool 90s aesthetic and attitude, which was really emerging out of the 80s into the 90s. And then I thought it was really cool. And then there was one year, I think I went to Toys R Us in Croydon. I don't know if you ever went there.
No, I never went to Toys R Us, and no, I never will.
Oh, amazing! I think Toys R Us, it was huge. It was like floor to ceiling in massive section of Lego, and had a huge computer game section.
Yeah.
And you could actually try and play a computer game before you buy. So I was just interested in playing Sonic 2, I think it was, because then I could have played with my sister.
Yeah.
So we just sort of played there. So she was Tails, because the little sister, Tails in Sonic 2 was little brother or little sister mode, and I was Sonic, and I played a bit, but I couldn't roll up. Because I didn't know how, because I didn't know about the spin dash thing, because I remember playing it on the original.
Sorry, so was your first experience Sonic 2?
Well, no, it was Sonic 1 next door, and then I played a bit in the Toys R Us, but it was Sonic 2 then, because that's the newish game that came out. Yeah. And then I thought, I really, really want this. I've decided I really want this. And then as a surprise for Christmas one year, my parents got me the Mega Drive 2, not the original, it was the new one.
Yeah.
And then actually, to answer your question then, the first games I got with that was Sonic 2, Sonic Spinball, and there was another two games I can't remember of, but the two that really sticks in my mind was Sonic 2 and Spinball, and they're the two that really introduced me to the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people have a lot of disdain for Sonic Spinball, and I can understand the graphics is not the same. Go on.
No, because it's funny enough you say that, because I had Sonic 1 and I had Sonic 2. And then there used to be this lad at school, and I brought his Sonic 2 off him because he completed it.
Okay.
And then he also had, and then what is it? I got Echo the Dolphin. No, I got Sonic. I got Sonic Spinball. Sorry, for Christmas.
Yeah.
And I hated it, and I swapped it with him for Echo the Dolphin. And he had serious buyer's remorse, and he was just trying to swap back, and I wasn't having it. I did end up having Sonic Spinball again on the Mega Drive, like in the original run, but I can't remember how I got it again. But yeah, I did have it again. But yeah, so I understand what you're saying when you talk about the disdain. I was very frustrated with that game.
Yeah, and I do understand it, but I think because it's one of my first intros to it, I really have a soft spot for Spinball. And if you play it in faster mode, so the Sonic when he's Spinball goes a lot faster, it actually runs a lot better. But yeah, the graphics, the sound, it's not the best in the world. But it introduces the Freedom Fighters, I think, from the other Sonic series, not the one you watched, the other one. The Sat AM.
Well, it also has the, but then they might have been in that Sat AM anyway, because a lot of that is ripped from the Archie comics or vice versa? So there's a lot of, have you read the Archie comics?
Yeah, I've read some of them over the years, and it really goes deep into the lore, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've only sort of read a few of the early ones, like in collected editions, but you can really see like a cross-pollination of influences, where characters from the Sat AM ones and then also the Adventures one that I saw all sort of come and mix, and yeah, it's crazy. I mean, yeah, we get into comics and stuff in a second, but yeah, those original games, man, they were amazing. So you really love Sonic Spinball then?
I mean, I wouldn't say love it. I definitely have a soft spot for it. It's definitely a game I'd go
Do you
back
like
and to, and I must have.
do you like the music in on the menu?
Oh God! No, so I can hear my head already. No, no, it is. It is generally terrible, and even only at the very, very end do you get that the Sonic theme at the end. To be fair, the Sonic theme gets less and less as the games go on. To be fair, but with this one, it only really appears at the end when you win the game and Tails saves you and you fly off. But then you have that really sort of loud. Oh, it's not even a guitar.
Oh,
it's a
horrible.
really.
Did you know that's
It's screeching.
that's an error? That's a
Is
coding
it?
error. If you go on YouTube and search it, you can hear the original, what it's supposed to sound like, and it sounds. I mean, it's not like it's not like a classic piece of music, but it
No.
sounds like music rather than just a cat being tortured with a keyboard or whatever the hell it sounds like. Because
Yeah, it's a terrible. But I think which shows really how that game stands out in its singularity. When you look at the 16-bit era, because when you one of the things that a lot of people do think about when it comes to the original, the original Sonic games across the Mega Drive, the 16-bit Mega CD, if you want to include that as well, which I think a lot of people do now because now it's a lot more accessible. Is the music is a lot of the time second to none. It's quality.
Yeah, well, Sonic is always, I'd say more than Mario. Mario's got it's sort of it's a couple of very iconic tunes in Mario, and then that's all I ever hear of it. Whereas every time there's a new Sonic game, people just go mad for the soundtrack. Although it does lean more and more into the nostalgia of especially Green Hill Zone and that these days. But yeah, the music in Sonic is amazing. So your first game you owned then was Sonic 2.
Yeah, it was Sonic 2,
Did you
Sonic Spinball.
Did you play it much two-player?
Yes, I did mainly because there was two ways, of course, of playing two-player in Sonic 2, wasn't there? You could just have the little brother mode, little sister mode. But then the problem is that's the thing with that Sonic game, and it still is really in a lot of the other Sonic games. Is if you shoot off, Tails takes ages to come back because you have to stop to a point where the AI can catch up with you.
Yeah.
And then the other version, of course, is that split screen mode, which, even though you're playing on a 14-inch television or whatever size the television, a parents had in the front room, it's probably bigger than 14-inch, it looked really good. It looked good at the time, but when you think back of it, you think it was all how compressed it was.
Oh yeah.
But that's how you played it then. But what you really needed was a proper 55-inch widescreen television to really get the most out of it.
Oh no, yeah, and it always used to frustrate me, that television that just swapped your places.
Oh god! Oh yeah, that made it a challenge, especially if you go so far ahead.
Yeah.
I think it's even more annoying if you're the one that hits the television screen and then it flips you back.
Yeah. Well, you get scared to hit anything once you're ahead.
It was.
Yeah.
I was going to say it did Mario Kart before Mario Kart was doing the blue shell.
And
the bullet.
Yeah.
Really, which is something we'll probably talk about another time. But so I suppose with several. I think definitely what I know is obviously, so you had Sonic 1 with your Mega Drive. How did you then start accumulating? Well, I know you got Sonic Spinball, you swapped it, and you said your friend got buyer's remorse.
Yeah.
But then how did you get into Sonic 3, Sonic and Knuckles, and Sonic 2?
So, like I say, Sonic 2 is I just borrowed that off my friend because I loved the first game. And I eventually did complete it. It used to take me so long, but them Sonic games now, I find it hard to imagine running out of lives on them. But but if I play a newer one, I definitely think a lot of it's muscle memory, because newer ones just feel infinitely harder to remember. But then the levels are bigger. I don't know. It's probably a combination of the two. But yeah, so I had to Sonic 2, and I remember getting so far in it without dying, and then having to go to school and being frustrated. And it's funny enough you talk about the spin dash, because I got all the way up to the hills top zone before I realised that you could spin dash. The only way I clocked that even existed as a moveset was when Tails did it, because you got to do the loops and then you break into the ground.
Yes, when you go into the volcano.
Yeah, I was about halfway through that zone when Tails just randomly did that, and I was like, "What? What the?" I was like, I didn't know what I was looking at. So that's when I can't remember how I found out, because obviously there was no internet back then. But I
No.
must have just been exploring with the buttons and that to find my way. But yeah, I eventually did that, and then I never had Sonic CD back in the day. I mean, who did?
No.
And I never,
No. Exactly.
yeah, and I never had the Mean Bean machine. Um, but then I moved on to Sonic 3, and I remember seeing it advertised in Woolworths. You know, they used to have like a TV just running demos.
Oh
Yeah,
yes.
and then from there, it came up. I was playing it in Blockbusters as a rental, and then they
Mm.
used to sell their games second hand, like their X rentals,
Oh
and I
yeah.
bought it then. And one thing that really, really frustrated me with it was that
Mm.
um, the well, no, I didn't realize what was going on at the time, but the battery that saves the RAM, I think it is, or the ROM, you know, the ROM battery for saving games,
Oh
must have
yes.
been dead because it didn't save. So, whereas Sonic 3, the amazing thing about it was the save feature, I had no save feature.
Mm.
Yeah.
So the one feature they installed into the game,
Yeah.
which everyone was grateful for, you never got to get the benefit of.
No, and it frustrated the hell out of me because I had rented it and knew it had that feature, but
Mm.
but now I owned it, it never did. But
Oh.
thinking back, I realised now I owned Sonic and Knuckles before I owned that game. I got it for Christmas,
Mm.
and it sort of felt like because I was very unaware of what was really going on. It sort of felt like Sonic 3, but not as cool. If that makes sense, it felt like
Yeah,
yeah,
it
because
does.
I
Yeah.
didn't really understand what was going on with it and that again you had no tails in that. And to be honest,
No.
I way prefer the music and that of Sonic 3 to Sonic and Knuckles. I think the zones are so amazing. I prefer the Knuckles music in it. I mean, I don't even know if that's in the new one now. You know, probably know better than me. If that original Sonic 3 Knuckles music is a thing anymore.
I think you're talking about some of the Michael Jackson music.
Yeah, well,
That whole beatbox sort of thing
Ye-
that was on it.
yeah. I mean, was that Michael Jackson or is there other reasons? I don't. It's very confusing, isn't it? What's going on with all that? Yeah, but what about you then with Sonic 3 and that? Like, what was your
Well,
intro?
I remember back then. I was getting. I think it's Fleetway. You probably correct me which publisher it was, but it was Sonic the
Yeah,
comic.
yeah, absolutely loved it.
So that had the build up of the Sonic 3 game, and I saved up my money for it, and I got it on the day it came out. And I can't remember, and it must have been my parents that probably got it from me because I gave them my pocket money. I said, "Can you give me this game, please?" Or pre-ordered it or somehow, and it arrived. I remember playing it, and similar to you, the levels were absolutely huge. Even though there's only 2 acts, there's still a lot bigger, a lot more to do, a lot more exploration. And I think as well with Sonic, it's probably the first time you had a genuine narrative pushing the game along.
Yes, definitely,
Like,
definitely.
and also as well, because I think by the time I was playing Sonic 3, I hadn't completed Sonic 2. So when the cut scene with Sonic jumping off the plane and becoming
Yeah.
Supersonic, which was, I'd never seen that before, so I was never aware of it. And then, then Knuckles grabs your emeralds, he laughs at you and disappears, and then he's like, okay, so you want to get these emeralds because you want to be Supersonic, because that looks like a really cool thing.
Yeah.
And then, but also I remember as well, by the end of Sonic 3, the game on its own, I was genuinely disappointed because, and there's a reason for this, because I think by that point, by the time I got to Sonic 3, I was playing both Sonic 2 and Sonic 3 concurrently.
Yeah.
And I remember Sonic 2 just being that much bigger in terms of how many levels there were and the epicness of how that game eventually finished.
Yeah.
Which is probably why I know that.
Yeah,
but then
definitely,
I did
it really
choose
ramps up
yeah.
the last 3 zones, doesn't it? Just all feel like a massive narrative
Oh, yeah.
shift.
It-
But Sonic 3
it does.
continues that transition from zone to zone to zone.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, because I've played currently, but what I did used to do, I used to cheat a bit when it comes to the Sonic games, not Sonic 3 Knuckles, but definitely Sonic 1 or 2. I'd do the whole level select, do the last level, and then, right, now I know how it ends, I can just carry on playing, which was really bad. But with Sonic 3, and I just played it all the way through, so no cheats.
Yeah.
And I was disappointed by the end, because I thought it was such a sudden ending, and as you said, even if you go back to the original Sonic 1, it ramps you up to the end of the final zone. When and I think it's the only zone as well. Go back to Sonic 1, it's the only zone where where the background is different act to act. So Act
in the
1, you're
scrap
outside
rail zone, yeah.
Yeah, so outside Act 1, you're outside outside the factory. Zone 2, you're in the factory. Zone 3, he drops you into essentially it's a palette swap of Labyrinth Zone, but it's essentially the thing. And then you jump up, and then you go to the final zone, and it ramps you to the end. And then, as you said, the last 3 zones or so of Sonic 2, you've got Metropolis, Sky Chase, Wing Fortress, and then Death Egg Zone.
Yeah.
When it didn't really have that Sonic 3, so I was genuinely disappointed. I hadn't obviously done the Chaos Emeralds by then.
Yeah, yeah.
But then because of the save feature, you can then go back and do the Chaos Emeralds, be Supersonic, and find out all the secrets, and that's fine. But it still felt quite empty.
Well, I guess you were having trouble because it feels rushed because it's only half a game.
Yeah, but I didn't. But as you said, without the internet, I didn't know that at the time. Even Sonic the Comic didn't say, by the way, this is half a game. The second half is coming in 6 months' time.
Yeah. Well, even in the comic. The comic adaptation of it for those Sonic the comics, they'd treat it as 2 completely separate adventures.
That's true.
So that doesn't help either with that. I mean, a big part of that was because of. I mean, there's a couple of reasons why they did that. The one was obviously the ROM size. It was a huge game, so they couldn't fit it all on one cartridge. Another was they had some sort of Happy Meal deal with McDonald's.
I heard about that.
So they rushed that through. McDonald's, I don't know, them and their Happy Meals, I tell you, man. They must have been angry because of the whole Batman Returns scenario. So.
Oh yeah, because they couldn't really do anything with merchandise because it was so aimed at adults, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I don't know if they had a chip on their shoulder because of that, and they weren't giving Sega no leeway. But I had those actual McDonald's toys, and and they were good. I broke a glass with a towels one. For some reason, I just put it in a glass. Do you remember its towels were like a wind-up rope? They were like you pour plastic cord and its towels go, and just smash the glass.
Oh yeah.
No idea why.
Was he crouched down and on wheels?
Sonic was. The towels was one of those ones where you get the plastic. A little bit of plastic, you put it through, and then when you pull it back, it catches on the mechanism, and then it makes the tail spin, sort of thing like that. Yeah.
But it's the fact you mentioned McDonald's in that respect. It just shows how, I think we've sort of been peppering this as we've been talking through it. We've already mentioned 2 cartoon series. We've mentioned the comics, which I know we'll talk about more later. We've also mentioned as well about you just said about McDonald's. The franchise was big. I'll probably say we'll get into a point now. This was probably peak Sonic for a long time.
Peak Sonic Mania, I would say.
Yeah, and peak, and definitely peak Sega because I think it was. The Mega Drive was definitely eclipsing the NES at this point.
Yeah,
I mean, it eclipsed it already.
I mean, what year did the Super Nintendo come out? I don't really know what year that came out, but I know Nintendo were very much of a if it ain't broke, don't fix it with the NES because I think that run from like 84 to 92 or something. Yeah, a long time for console generations back then. I mean, maybe not so much today, but back then everyone else was bringing out something new every few years, and they just held on to this one bit of kit, and it nearly cost them It nearly cost them big, to be honest.
Well, yeah, the original NES definitely was 80s into the 90s, and then I've just looked this up just because I can't remember dates that well, but Super Nintendo came out in Japan in 1990, but we didn't get it here in the UK until 1992, which was the same year that Sonic 2 came out.
Yeah.
But I still remember the adverts about them really taking the mickey about Nintendo, how slow it was, but I think they were really comparing it to the NES at the time. And I don't think it is. I think they even used the SNES for it, 'cause I think they compared... I'm going to be wrong here, and I'm going to look it up and be like, no, you're completely wrong. I'm sure they compared Mario World to a Sonic game, saying how slow it was.
Well, I've heard that apparently on Mario games. I don't know which ones they're comparing, but I don't know if it was Sonic 1 compared to Super Mario Brothers or if it was compared to Super Mario World, saying that actually Mario moves faster than Sonic. But it's because of the animation and the momentum of it all that you get the illusion of speed. But because Mario's pretty nippy. When you start on those early games, he just zips all around the screen, really. But
No, you're right. I mean, especially if we think about the speed of Mario, and this is the NES to be fair, so we're not really comparing like for like. We're comparing
yeah,
8-bit to 16-bit here. But no, you know when you have Mario 3, and and the first time you fly in the World 1-1 on grassland,
or
where you get the
well, shock you here.
raccoons.
I've only played Super Mario Brothers, and the second
Oh,
one.
okay.
I've played the lost levels a bit, as in I've died immediately and got tired of it. But I've never played Super Mario Brothers 3, and I've never played Super Mario World.
I'll definitely say of the Mario games, Mario 3 is my favourite.
Yeah,
I'd probably
that's
say.
what people
But
generally
there's
say.
yeah, I mean, it's normally that or it's Mario World. But yeah, for me, it's Mario 3. I think what I was going to say is when he runs and you can fly for the first time, because you've got to run up, as you said, it does feel quick. It does feel quite quick.
Yeah.
But I think, but then even so, even as a child's memory for me, it did feel to me Sonic was infinitely quicker. The colours felt brighter,
Yeah.
and it also felt like with Mario, you're just going left to right. When with Sonic, it felt like you was going up, down, left, right, and
momentum,
different secrets.
Yeah. And it just felt
momentum
good. It felt more like the anti-establishment hero, versus the old guard. It definitely had that going for it, and I think it led to a lot of copycats in that 16-bit era. Everyone wanted Sonic the Hedgehog more so than Mario, I would say.
Yeah, because he had that. Going back, we said he had that cool attitude. They said I think the rebel. I think you just put it there. Was probably the spot on. But so with you when you play Sonic 3, sorry. I know you didn't really get the save feature, but how was your experience of it?
Oh,
I mean, I've told you how deeply disappointed I was at the end of it. How are you with it?
Oh, I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved. I loved all the music. I was just really, really enthralled with that game more than any other. Like, if I said what was my favourite Sonic game, I'd probably say the original one. But I don't know how much of that is because of nostalgia. But I do think number 3 of those original, the legendary Genesis, as the Americans call it, trilogy. That game is the one. And I would. That wouldn't change if it was just Sonic 3 without Sonic and Knuckles. But when you get Sonic and Knuckles, I mean, now you're really talking. You're talking about ramping up. That game ramps up something.
Yes.
Fierce.
Yeah, and I think I got that with Sonic and Knuckles. I can't remember if I got it for birthday or Christmas. I definitely got it when about the time it came out, which would have been October, which must have been near my birthday. Yeah. I remember I played it for the first time.
Yeah.
First thing that came to my mind is the opening graphic for the title screen looked infinitely better than anything Sonic had done. You had the 3D image of the Death Egg falling onto Lava Reef and Sonic landing on the platform with Knuckles.
Chef's kiss.
Yes, yeah. But then straight away I was disappointed. All you got was Sonic and Knuckles. There's no save option, no multiplayer, and I thought it was just straight into the game.
Yeah,
and I thought, okay,
that's what I always thought. Yeah, it just felt like all the extra stuff you get with Sonic 3, you got none of that on the Sonic and Knuckles.
No,
if you were playing it on its own. So that's why it felt to me like a slimmed down version.
Yeah, and even and I don't know if they did this on purpose. Oh, they must have done. But it felt like Sonic the Comic really talked down Sonic and Knuckles a bit. It was like it's more of the same for Sonic 3, and it's the same. It's the same spot because I think up to that point, all the sprites were different from Sonic game to Sonic game. Because even the Sonic sprite himself was slightly different from Sonic 2 to Sonic 1, and then Sonic 3, him and Tails not Tails as much, but they got a complete facelift.
Oh, it's completely like the black sheep of the game when it comes to that because it's so different. Like, I know we talked about it a little later, but if you want to compare Sonic Mania in there with those, Sonic 3 still stands out as the one that is just crazy and funky and it's doing its own thing. It really does.
It was. Yeah, I think one way to probably compare it, we haven't even touched on Sonic CD. That's because we never really played it originally. But you know how Sonic CD, when you look at the level design, it is completely all over the place. It is so many colours. You hated it.
I hate Sonic CD. I love it and I hate it. I love it.
Yeah.
Like you, I've grown up with Sonic, and then Sonic CD almost got like a mythical status because it was this game that no one played, and then loads of magazines would go on saying this is the best 2D Sonic. Shame you can't play it. Trust it's the best. You don't really hear people saying that now that it's available.
No, it's true, but no, that's true actually. I mean, but you know, like how those colours are really zany. When Sonic 3 was like that, but because it only had 16 bits, it didn't have the extra bits that Sonic CD had. It was felt more manageable, which is probably why it still stands out.
Yeah.
But I remember when you had Sonic and Knuckles and you played it, and then the whole thing was, oh, you can put Sonic 3 on top of Sonic and Knuckles. It's a revolutionary lock-on technology.
Yeah.
And I remember sort of playing it, putting it in. I thought, okay. And then, because normally up to Sonic 3, with the save mode, all you had was the Supersonic image above your save file if you completed it with, with all the curse symbols. And I thought, okay, I'll try that, and plugged it in. I thought, I wonder what this is going to do. And it had a completely different cutscene to what you got when you just played Sonic and Knuckles on his own. So you had Tails escorting Sonic drop down. They both look down, then Knuckles comes out of that other bit of Mushroom Hill, which you never saw before.
You get an extra chance at a special stage.
Yes, and then it unlocked all the Super Emeralds. And then it's like, okay, this feels a bit connected. And then when you but then you don't even think about it time, you still treat it as a separate game.
Yeah, even now it's so hard to not see that divide. It really is.
Yeah, although I would probably argue that fan-made versions of Sonic 3 and Knuckles have tried to combine the two together, and definitely Sonic Origins, which came out a couple of years ago, combined the two together with, in the original Sonic 3, the Death Egg explodes and that's it, game ends.
Well, you see it drop, don't you? You see it drop down and then he does his finger wag and jumps at the screen. That's a Sonic 3 on its own. Yeah,
and then with Sonic and Knuckles, you don't get the finger waggle, as you mentioned. The whatever it is, the platform they're on, that drops down. Death Egg drops down, and now with Sonic and Knuckles, and then Sonic and 3 and Knuckles on Sonic Origins, you get Tails flying down now, and then they take you to the cutscene of Sonic and Knuckles where you see the Death Egg fall into the lava reef.
Do you see it fall into the lava reef?
Yeah, they've added that bit now to put the two games together, and then they
is that as like a cartoon? We're going a bit ahead of ourselves, but is that like in-game sprites, or is that one of those animations they did?
It's not the animation. What they've done, they took the title screen from the original Sonic and Knuckles, removed Sonic and Knuckles from it, so you just have the Death Egg falling into the lava reef.
I have done it. I just can't remember it. I'll need to replay that and see.
Because I think that got me when I replayed it when Sonic Origins came out, and it really ties it all together. But like I said, when you play, you don't really get that. It's still, as you said, it has that disconnect still.
Yeah.
And then
it always will. It's the nature of it. But I mean, when we're talking about things going from one to the other, I still think to this day, in all the realm of 2D Sonic games, no game has done zone to zone transitions better than these two games. I think they're phenomenal, and I think every Sonic 2D game I've played since, I'm just disappointed. Even Sonic Mania just doesn't compare to how it shows Sonic and Tails moving from zone to zone, in my humble opinion.
Well, oh no, I completely agree, because I think with Sonic Mania they just use that Phantom Ruby just to take it from zone to zone.
I mean, I know it's had patches. Like, I've played through Sonic Mania once when it was new, and I have heard it's had some patches, so now there's new transitions. But I mean, I'm old school, I'm like, if you wanted that to be in the game, you should have just had that in the game when I bought it. I don't need to go back. You don't need to tell me, that wasn't the finished game. Because isn't the Metal Sonic battle in Sonic Mania updated as well? Where it's a giant Metal Sonic now.
Yeah, they
changed that boss fight, didn't they? I'm sure they did.
They have changed it. Because I think at one point, it was a chase with, the Metal Sonic from Knuckles Cortex, if I remember correctly, and he's chasing it down. But it still sort of resembled a bit like how it was with, we're going ahead a bit here, but how Sonic 3 and Knuckles end, when the Death Egg robot's chasing at the end of Death Egg Zone. Yeah. They've sort of done that with a giant Metal Sonic, but they've sort of changed it a bit, so it's something else. But they've sort of brought in Sonic Mania the Silver Sonic from Sonic 2, the 8-bit version.
Yeah, that was in my one. He's like firing loads of little Silver Sonics out. I mean, before we get to the 8-bit ones, let's just do the last few 16-bit era ones. So
go on.
We've gone through them. So we've got Sonic 3D, Flicky's Island.
Oh, Flicky's Island. I think it's the only.
The Americans call it 3D Blast.
It's the only 16-bit Sonic I've never finished, and I wish I had finished it.
Oh, really? Oh, you never finished it?
I was so disappointed in it.
See, yeah. When I played it, I don't know how. Like, if I was going through the games now, I would sort of see that as a spin-off. At the time, I saw it as like this is the guy. You know, this is the next one after Sonic 3. Maybe I do feel that way still. It's hard. I don't know. If you see a list of like mainstream games, is that in the mainstream game list, or is that considered a sideshow? Do you know?
I think they've considered it a sideshow. I think Sega officially really now class Sonic 1, Sonic CD now. Actually, they've really incorporated into the timeline, as it were. In fact, if you take Sonic Origins at its word, then it is Sonic 1, Sonic CD, Sonic 2, then Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Yeah. That's the timeline. Like there's no Sonic Spinball. Even though, like I said, if you play Sonic Origins, the Mount Mobius is there.
Well, I suppose that was never really canon anyway, was it? I mean, it was different times then, because your idea of canon was just whatever text was written on the back of the box or in the instruction manual.
Yeah.
But that game, like you said, it feels more like it's a game tied into that cartoon.
Yeah, it does, because all the different animals, like you said, in capsules. So Sally Acorn's there as well as all the others.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's just I think with Sonic, I think I was disappointed with Sonic 3D. I didn't really pay it much heed. I think because when you come off the back of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, which does feel like the finale of this epic adventure if you put the four together, and certainly it feels more like that now if you go back and play Sonic Origins and you do the whole thing in story mode.
Yeah, I mean, shall we talk a little bit about the placement of Sonic CD, because that's quite a topic on its own right. I mean, what do you think? Obviously, they had Sonic 1 and they had a hit on their hands and they wanted to follow it up. And so did they split the team in half or something like that? And half of them stayed in Japan and worked on their own sequel, which was Sonic CD. And the other half went to America. Or was it just the showrun? The main guy went to America and he couldn't talk to the team of developers because they didn't speak Japanese and he didn't speak English.
Yeah, the original creator, he went to America to do Sonic because he wanted to take it a bit different. The original creator of Sonic, he went to America and went to the Sega Technical Institute because they can then just he can do his own thing, and he wasn't really under the auspices of Sega in Japan, where they're a bit more safe. And so Sega in Japan did Sonic CD, and Sonic in America then essentially created Sonic 2. So you essentially had two sequels going at the same time. One had the original sprite in Sonic CD, and the other had a very slightly different sprite of Sonic and created Tails. Even though, no, that's a lie, I didn't create Tails because Sonic 2 16-bit is not his debut.
No, but it's the game where he was invented. Even if Sonic 2 on the 8-bit released first, I don't imagine them 8-bit guys invented Tails. Because Tails has even got a... Because I don't know what their original plan for these games were, but Tails has got a cameo in CD, hasn't he? At some point,
no,
he get an image up of him.
He appears in Sonic CD, but only under the Taxman and Stealth creation when they did the mobile port over a decade ago.
No. There's definitely something going on. I wish I could remember. But there's definitely something, if you can go into the files and you can get images up, all these secrets they do. One of them is a picture of Tails and it says, "See you in the next game."
Yeah, but maybe if it's in the files, not aware of it, because I know it didn't show up in the game itself when you played it originally.
Yeah.
Because I got Sonic CD when I made it available for the PC.
Yeah.
And it was the worst way to play it because I didn't even have a gamepad for the PC at the time. So I was just playing it on a keyboard and, God, it was awful. But I don't remember it popping up then. I just remember when I played the mobile
No, I
port.
think you just find it as like a cheat. You got to cheat to find it.
Ah, right. So they took it and incorporated it into the game when they did
just
the
said,
mobile ports.
this is going to be the new character, your mate in the next game. But then obviously Sonic 2 came out first, so that became obsolete. And then, I mean, the rest is history. There were people arguing ever after what comes first in the canon, Sonic CD or Sonic 2. They generally now say Sonic CD does, which in my head canon, it's Sonic CD, just based on the Sonic sprite, I guess.
I think that's it. The Sonic sprite is the same with Sonic 1 and Sonic CD. And then, as you said, I mean, now it's definitely there now. At the end of Sonic CD, you've got Tails saying, see you next game, which then does lead you into Sonic 2.
Yeah.
And which Yuji Nako, who was one of the original creators of Sega, created with the Sega Century Institute. And then with a slightly different sprite. And then naturally it goes into Sonic 3. But what's interesting is over the years is how... was it Sonic 1? Definitely between Sonic 2 and Sonic 3, they added stuff to try and tie the game in. So with the mobile port of Sonic 2, for example, you do see like a little sprite of the Death Egg falling near the falling onto Angel Island.
Okay.
And then him jumping up and down. But that was only the mobile port.
Yeah.
But then obviously now with Sonic Origins, as you've mentioned earlier, they've got the animations which tie the game in more. So particularly when you play in story mode, it does feel like one long bloody game. Mm-hmm. Even though you've got the credits at the end of each game. Even they've taken the title screens out of each game, they've still kept the credit. I guess there's got to be a legal matter to get the credits in. But with that, the canon, and I think my head canon was similar to yours, is Sonic 1, Sonic CD, 2 and 3 Knuckles, but I know that's the debate.
Yeah, when the one thing that really throws it off for me is the Metal Sonic. Because everything else works in, I can say, okay, so Sonic is obviously faster and he's more skilled because he can do a spin dash in Sonic 2, whereas in CD he has to charge that up. He just gets flyer. Also, Sonic 3 and Sonic 2 pretty much leads into Sonic 3. So, you could argue, I mean, in the Origins collection, it paints it as in that's happening immediately after the fact. The Death Egg falls and then Sonic immediately goes now. I mean, I don't remember it being painted that way when I was younger, but we're not Japanese, so we don't know what the intentions were originally in Japan. We just got weird gobbledygook in a lot of our menus saying, this happened in Mobius, which isn't even a thing anymore. But the Metal Sonic, because the Metal Sonic in CD is obviously far more advanced than the Metal Sonic in Sonic 2. And so that's the one thing that always sort of bugged me. But it's not, it's not game breaking or anything, because you could just say, well, they kept the older version on the Death Egg just as a backup.
I mean, I suppose another thing in your head canon, if you really, if you really want to go deep down the rabbit hole, is you could say, well, but when you really face, although to be fair, I'm going to finish it, even though I know I've got a caveat for this, is when you really properly face him, it's going to be at Starlight Zone in the future.
Yeah.
Not Starlight Zone, Stardust Speedway.
Yeah.
Which says there again, it shows how similar Sonic 1 and Sonic CD are. You've got Sonic CD are. You've got very similar zones in both.
Yeah, but
you can take up.
Yeah, did you ever do the things though? Did you ever use that cheat where you can just put items wherever you want them to be? In like Sonic 2. The debug mode.
I know the one you mean. I did debug mode all over Sonic 2.
That's what Sonic
just
CD
for the fun of it.
feels like to me. It feels like someone just debug moded it. And there's rings in walls and springs that go nowhere.
But I think that's the thing, because it wanted you to replay, give it the replay value. If you go to the past, then those rings that are in the wall, you can grab them, or in the future, where the rings which didn't exist did now exist somewhere else. They did try and give a lot of replay value. I'd say Sonic CD was very adventurous for what he wanted to do.
I mean, it's interesting to actually think about that, because that gimmick, the whole time travel gimmick. Like again, I don't know exactly how connected it was to Sonic 2 in its development before it got split. But Sonic 2 originally had that with the time travel. Did you know that or not?
I heard. I didn't know how far they went with it. I mean, of course they scrapped it. But...
Yeah, because the Hilltop Zone layout. That is the past version of well, some of the sprites in that is the past version of the Emerald Hill Zone, which is why it looks the same.
See, that makes sense. I always took it as essentially a palette swap
Yeah,
because I thought, okay, so I always took it as a palette swap for what it was because it does look very similar. But I didn't realise it was meant to be the past version of Sonic of the Emerald Hill Zone, which makes sense.
Yeah,
though.
I mean, not in its entirety, but you can see what I mean,
No.
where they've used that palette swap, like you say, and they've like used some ideas from there. But okay then, well we'll move on from the 8-bit ones because the only other 8-bit game I can think of off the top of my head is Total Chaotix, or Knuckles Chaotix, sorry, which I've only played it on a emulator for a few minutes.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. Have you ever played it much?
I've played it a bit, and I never really got into the whole sort of rubber band snap thing.
Yeah.
I understand what they're trying to do with it because they kind of brought it back into Sonic Mania with the Encore mode a little bit.
Yeah.
Without the restriction where you can have two characters on the screen that don't necessarily affect each other and you can swap around and stuff and then you can get more into it. But yeah, I never really got into Knuckle Chaotix as much. I know it had really good ideas.
Yeah, I mean the levels on it are vertical, aren't they? The levels are much more vertical. It's like you're climbing up a mountain rather than running along the ground.
Yeah, it was really sort of appealing to Knuckles' moveset where it was all about the wall climb and about the gliding to go to different levels, which is actually really quite similar in some respects to Sonic CD. And especially now with Origins Plus, I've spent so much money on that game. The amount of times I've redone that in the last couple of years. Now you've got Knuckles in Sonic CD, you can climb up and stuff like that, and you can still see some similarities between that and Knuckles Chaotix in the vertical aspect, as you mentioned. And the rubber banding stuff, I never really got to grips with. I never got far with it. It was another one of those where I never got the 32X. I wanted to.
No. But they released. How many games are even on it? I don't know. Like, there's about
40. You know what? I saw a video of this where someone played apparently every single game available on the 32X, and apparently about 40 of them.
Really? And I bet it cost like 300 quid or something.
Well, you know what the daft thing is? I remember 20 odd years. It was 20 years ago. Was the internet around 20 years ago? Yeah, eBay was around 20 years ago. You could have bought the 32X for a $5.
Really?
Max.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really cheap. Which is probably a conversation we'll have another time, which is about retro games, where how expensive the retro market has now become.
Yeah, but it's all been turned into like a speculative market for douchebag rich people. I think the bottom's dropped off it now though. So
I hope so.
Yeah, because I remember like unopened Super Mario Brothers. So at one point they were claiming you could go to auction and get $1 million for it. But now that it's sort of dropped down, and I think they're looking at 25 grand for like your top one, which means it's lost something like 95% of its value, or so. The market's dropped out of that. Hopefully, that continues to be the case, because I think hobbies should be for the people who are interested in the hobbies, not for the money men. I mean, we could talk all day about how money men have just sort of ruined the games industry on every level at the moment. At this point.
But there was a point though where when you're talking about the 16-bit era, you could easily get, for example, Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic CD, weirdly, but you could never get 3 Knuckles because I think after Michael Jackson's death, Sonic 3 Knuckles was essentially in purgatory since 2011. I think you could always get it on Steam.
Yeah, I mean,
as a purchase, you couldn't get it for a long time.
Well, I had it on the GameCube. So I had that Sonic James on GameCube. I think the dates for that is around about 2005, maybe 2006.
Yeah,
sort of time. But I never understood what. Well, I mean, Sega have never said why there's this issue.
No,
I mean, some people say it's because of the all the scandals surrounding Michael Jackson, and then other people say it's just down to rights and that he was difficult to work with, and he lost interest in the project. I don't know. But
the thing with Michael Jackson, I mean, for a long time I do tie him to Sega in a lot of aspects because he had his own game. I think it was the Moonwalker game, and even at Trocadero. Did you ever go to Trocadero when it was the Sega World?
No, I didn't, unfortunately.
Because I went there '96, and number one, it was absolutely fantastic. You paid a certain amount of money to go in. You can play on any console you want. even Daytona was there. Obviously, Daytona was everywhere, but you have to pay for it. It had 8 massive screens, cameras on you and stuff. But it's also had a few rides there. And one of them was this sort of space ride there. And Michael Jackson was, quote unquote, the captain. The video screen and stuff like that. And so he was tied in a lot of ways, more than just the Sonic 3 soundtrack.
Yeah, so,
he did a lot of work with Sega.
So who knows what was the reason. But like you say, they used to be able to get those games because they were on Sonic Jam as well. So it's not like they just released the originals and then they could never release them again. They did release them a few times before they decided they weren't going to release them anymore. And if it's due to his death, makes me think maybe it's more a simple rights issue than any of the controversies.
Well, the controversy really started in the mid-90s. When they released the game as Sonic and Knuckles on the PC, that was the first time they swapped the music for some of the levels.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, it goes all the way back then. So the music you now get on Sonic 3. So like, Ice Cap.
It's Carnival Night Zone onwards, isn't it?
Carnival. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's. Oh no, yeah, you're right. It's Carnival Night, Ice Camp, and Launch Base. They're the 3 where the music's changed.
Yeah, which is
there's other bits which changed.
Tracks. Well, actually, to look down, they're all bangers. But I find Origins borderline unplayable because of that.
What's a big? All right, okay. No, Ice Cap I thought was a big loss. In terms of I thought that was a big loss. That really went well with the look and I think that's the thing when it comes to music in games. It has to have a feel to it. You need to feel it, and it gives you an atmosphere. It gives you
it's that nostalgia factor.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. But Ice Cap, I definitely agree, is a big loss. I was never a big fan of the Carnival Night music. Launch Base Zone, don't get me wrong, is really good, but when you play because apparently what happened was the music that is now the prototype music, and the music getting Origins was always meant to be the Sonic 3 and Knuckles music. Yeah. It's just Michael Jackson came on at such a late stage, and then when they decided to remove his music, or he wanted his music removed, they stripped everything out. For some reason, those and a couple of others, such as the original Knuckles music you like, or the original 1-Up music, was still staying there for Sonic 3, but they've sort of changed that in Sonic and Knuckles. So when you put the two together, it's one thing. Yeah. But I know what you mean about the Sonic Origins version of the music. It does sound pretty ropey in some respects.
It feels unfinished. It feels like a placeholder, and then they never took the time to make it memorable.
Well, the thing is, though, there is a prototype version on it you can get online, and I've actually downloaded that file, and it's on my phone, and I do play it sometimes because I'm such a Saturday lover of Sonic.
Music. The OG music.
Yeah, and the prototype music of Sonic 3 with those levels, it sounds really good, and there's even an invincibility music, which I wish they at least used for Hypersonic, because it would work so well. And, it's so good. And it's not even just that with the music with Sonic 3 and Origins. The whole music, it's very much compressed when you compare it to Sonic 1, 2 and CD, because it had... But then there's a whole story issue with Sonic Origins where... they essentially took they're basically still essentially a section of ROMs. They took the 3 games that Taxman and Stealth did and Headcanon,
the mobile games.
Stuck the mobile games on, got Headcanon and Stealth. For some reason, Taxman wasn't involved to do Sonic 3, but didn't give them the time they needed to really do it and polish it and make it great. And it really upset Headcanon to the point he did put a statement out on the day it came out saying it's not finished, we're not very happy with the results, we have a patch ready to go if Sega want it. And I thought, okay, this is not going to finish if that's how he's come out. But then they did Sonic Origins Plus, and then he came back and he did a load of stuff, because there's so many issues with Sonic Origins in the beginning. So I think the classic example, is when you go to Metropolis Zone in Sonic 2, there's a bounce, you jump up and there's a load of spikes. And I know you never used to hit them when you jumped up originally, but you did when it first came out. But they've changed that in Sonic Origins Plus. But thankfully, if you don't buy Sonic Origins Plus, you still get the download patch, and that stops it.
Does it use the European bug where if you fall on spikes in Sonic 1 and then you land on spikes off that, you die?
Oh, the multiple spikes, the doing, oh dear, you've lost a life.
Is that in the Sonic Origins, or have they removed that? Because I think that was just a European problem, wasn't it?
It was a PAL issue, yeah. And also as well, yes, but there is a cheat mode. I'll fund you the code and send it to you. But you can have that put back in, so you can go boing boing doing. But then, which actually it's funny you mentioned that about the PAL version, and with the PAL version of Sonic 1,
yeah,
the music for Dr. Robotnik is slower and a lot more deadlier than in the normal version, where it's now where it feels ramped up.
I'll have to play it on Mega Drive again. I think that's the only way to really get that original feel back again. I'll have to give it a go. But I mean, because of the, we'll move on in a second to the 8-bit games and just have a question about them. But I still play my Sonic 3 on the GameCube. That's sort of my one now. It's not widescreen, but then the original game wasn't widescreen, so it doesn't bother me, and I get the music that I love. So that's my default way for that one.
You know what the thing is? I don't have the GameCube anymore. I still have the Mega Collection.
Yeah.
But because I've still got a Wii out here, which was originally my wife's, I can't play it on my Wii U, but I can play it on the Wii, so I can just pop it into the console and play it again.
Yeah. I think you should, because it'll bring back good memories. And I think they're pretty flawless ports, to be honest. I mean, someone more
they are.
minded than me will probably say no, but they feel more like the original games than the Origin. But I love the Origin, but then the Origin isn't trying to be like the original. It is supposed to be an updated HD version with widescreen and all the tweaks they've done to it. But
there's still one thing in Origins I wish they did, and it bugs me to this day. And I have to say it now because I think I've said it to you once, but I've not said it to anyone else. I have to say it now because at least then it's out in the open and it's my therapy done. But when you play the Knuckles bit of Sonic 3 and Knuckles in Sonic Origins, he's still lying. They put the cutscene in where he's lying on the grass, which they didn't do with Sonic 3 Knuckles. They just started him in Angel Island Zone.
But, I know the bit. And the bomb drops and the robot comes.
Yeah, and that's in Sonic and Knuckles. And they've taken that scene, they've put it into Sonic 3 and Knuckles when you play as Knuckles.
In what zone is it in? Is it in Angel Island or Mushroom?
No, they kept it in Mushroom Hill.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, hang on a minute, at the end of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, if you're playing as Sonic or Tails, or even Amy actually, you see Knuckles with the Master Emerald walking up to the, we're in Angel Island, it's clearly Angel Island Zone, looking at the plane as you fly off. So you think, well, hang on a minute, he's going to relax on Angel Island Zone, and that's where the game starts for the cleanup. But no, the cutscene's still in Mushroom Hill, and they've even widescreened it and HD'd it. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, you had this opportunity to put it in the beginning, and it's still, but it's such a list of things. So in my head, I'm thinking, so he's in Mushroom Hill Zone relaxing, and he goes all the way back to Angel Island to chase it.
Well, I remember always in my, talking about headcanon, that always meant to me that Knuckles only ever did it from Mushroom Hill, because that's where the cutscene was. So I thought that's where the cutscene is. So that's the version. That's the more authentic version. Plus, I mean, I know you've completed these games way more than me. Back in the day, I did complete Sonic 3 and Knuckles with Knuckles, and I just remember absolutely hating the Marble Garden Zone because Knuckles' lame-ass jump means he can't hit the eyes on those statues when they're higher. The ones that fire the arrows out.
Oh, another one.
He can't always reach him because he's got his jump isn't as good as Sonic's, and I just remember hating it so much, getting killed by these arrows, trying to climb up the wall partially and then hit them, and
Well, that's it. It's funny you mention it, because that's something we could probably sort of finish out now. When it comes to the 16-bit, am I correct in thinking Sonic's the fastest but has the medium height jump? It feels like to me that Tails is the second fastest but has the highest jump. And it also feels like to me that Knuckles is the slowest of the running. He's the lowest in the jumping, but he does obviously have the wall climbing and the gliding to make up for it.
Yeah. I saw a YouTube video once when it was comparing the Sonics in each game compared to them, and it varies. It really does vary.
Really?
Sonic's not even the fastest in a few of them. I think Tails is.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know. I imagine it's all just to do with how the sprite works and that. But yeah, you would think that. You'd think that's one of my one of the things that annoys me going forward with like 2D Sonic. Not so much the 3D, but the 2D Sonic. Um,
Mm.
every character's got a special ability, but Sonic doesn't. So in the end, Sonic feels like your weakest character because
Well,
he's not noticeably faster. Everyone seems to have the speed that Sonic has, plus something else going on. And so
yeah,
that really bugs me.
yeah, but I think in some respects I make up for it. So Tails, we said originally when you have Sonic 2, he's little brother or little sister mode. But when you play him on his own, if you're playing in Sonic 3 Knuckles, he's the easier mode. You can essentially just fly over
Yeah,
for a
but
lot of
doesn't
it,
that mean he's
land
better
a
then?
bit, and then fly again. Doesn't
Does
it?
that mean he's better than Sonic then? If he's finding the same adventure easier.
But then he's quick. But then he can fly over and find it easier. But then you don't really get the story benefits, do you? I mean, you don't get the emeralds and things. Where Knuckles, I think in Sonic 3 he's essentially meant to be just cleaning up after the robots.
Well, he's definitely hard mode. Like Knuckles.
Yes, he's, and especially Angel Island Part 2, where there's no giant ring to jump into, and it's just spikes everywhere and stuff like that.
Well, I remember actually the Lava Reef Zone when it starts on that, and he just has to jump over some spikes on a slight slope, and there's some enemies, and I remember dying a lot on that when I was young, just getting hit by enemies and land on these spikes and getting the hump. But
oh god, yeah, no, it is, but then I think as well with Knuckles, he has his own ability, which does feed into games afterwards, and actually has gone into the films as well, which I know we'll talk about later, is how he has the ability in terms of punching out super forms of characters.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, when you first see Knuckles at the start of that game, you think, well, this guy's hardcore, and then you never really properly fight him actually, don't you, in Hidden Palace? But it doesn't feel like the same guy. I think they could have done something more with that boss battle. But it was...
They could have done.
Okay, we'll go on to the 8-bit games now then. Because I feel like we can just talk about 16-bit games all night. Yes. Because that's the one that I know I am the most involved with. We're talking about the 8-bit games quickly. So, how many of these games have you played? I mean, I assume you've probably played all of them to various degrees, but have you got your real team into any of them? Or
some more than others. So I know I've played Sonic 1, Sonic 2 the most. Played Sonic Triple Trouble a bit more. Then I played shoot the dog. What's the one with Knuckles in it for the first time?
Triple Trouble.
I want to say it is Triple Trouble, is it? Right, okay, yeah. So I played those.
It's like a sequel to Sonic 3, isn't it?
Yeah, in some respects. Because I think as well, I mean, when I play Sonic 1, what I like about it is it really sort of shows the map and the direction you're going on South Island, which is the original island from Sonic 1 on both versions. And it definitely just feels like a stripped down version of Sonic 1 with some differences in the respect of... I mean... I think when you lose your rings, you lose all your rings. You're not getting them back. That's it. You're done.
No. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely the technical limitations that cause them to do that. The momentum, that all important momentum, is off. I remember seeing. I remember going to a friend's house and they had the 8-bit Sonic 1, and it looked better to me than the Mega Drive one, because we talk about games looking like stripped down versions of each other. The 8-bit one had a jungle level, which I thought was incredible. When I was jealous we didn't have that. And like you say, you get that map, which then helps give everything a bit more of a cohesive feel. And like you don't get it in the 16-bit. Now looking back, obviously now the 16-bit is way better. But yeah, it's funny how you get these ideas about it. So
well, some people do. I don't know if they're juggling here. Some people genuinely believe that the Sonic 1 8-bit version is the better version of Sonic.
Do they really?
Yeah, I think they do. I think because...
I like the music on that sky-based bit at the end. Where it's all lightning everywhere and...
I like that.
I like that. It's hard, but I do like it.
And I think that's the thing, because... because the 8-bit versions have been re-released quite a lot of times. I think it was on the Mega Collection.
Always the Game Gear versions, though.
Oh, yeah, and that's what I mean, I kind of understand why, but I also really get annoyed about that sometimes, because I know it means then you have to do more than one ROM, but then just do more than one ROM, because the Master System versions are infinitely superior because you get more of the maps, you get more of the screen space,
Definitely.
and
Well,
you don't get the cut.
yeah, especially on what boss was it? The jungle boss on Sonic One. The Doctor Robotnik is so close to you, you can just spam jump him from the start and kill him in seconds. And
Yeah.
then that first boss in Sonic 2 is nigh impossible on the Game Gear. It is a nightmare. But then that whole game's a nightmare. So, I mean, I can complete Sonic 1 on Game Gear as if it's a normal game. I struggle a bit towards the end, but I can get all the emeralds and that. Sonic 2 is the other game I've played the most on it. I've completed it, but save spanning. I would hate to have a go at it without a save.
Yeah, and also as well, I think it's the Green Hill Zone boss of Sonic 1 where it got that clipper thing which reminds me of the Sarlacc from Return of the Jedi, and you've got this ball jumping down at you. And
yeah, that's
on
Sonic
the Game
2.
Gear.
That's the one.
Oh, is that Sonic 2?
That's Sonic 2, yeah, because Sonic 2, each boss was a super.
Oh, it was
super
just a
bandit
Robotnik
rather than Robotnik.
Yeah.
And
no, you're right. Yeah, because Sonic 1, it is just him and his
just-
airship just going up and
yeah,
down.
and he goes up and down, and every now and again he goes down and tries to dart at you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, Sonic 2, yes, that's the one with the Sarlacc.
It's called
it's not
Ant-Lion, I think, or something like that. Yeah,
Ant-Lion. Yeah. So no, you're right. Correct me. That's correct. So, but it's just, I mean, yeah, if you get the more screen space, it's better. But I know not every Game Gear game went onto the Master System. I know later on, when Master System fell away, it was more about the Game Gear.
I don't know about Sonic Chaos. I don't know if that came onto the Master System.
I think that was Master.
I know Triple
think
Trouble
that was Master
didn't.
System.
But because Sonic Chaos is an interesting one anyway. I mean, have you played much Sonic Chaos?
Yeah, I have. I mean, definitely not as much as I have with the others, but I have played Sonic Chaos. I mean, and I think that's where you get them. If it's the one I'm thinking of, it's the one where you get the more momentum back. Yeah. The graphics are infinitely better than 1 and 2.
Yeah, well,
and
in Japan,
it feels more like a Sonic game.
Yeah, in Japan they're called Sonic and Tails. Them two. So Sonic Chaos and Triple Trouble. Actually, that's right, because it's Sonic Chaos and Triple Trouble. Is it? Yeah, it's actually Sonic and Tails 1 and Sonic and Tails 2. That's their Japanese titles. And Sonic Chaos was the first game where you could actually control Tails in flight. So, there you go. It's a little tidbit for you.
Hang on, so hang on a minute, so that was released before Sonic 3 on the 16-bit?
Yeah, Sonic Chaos was, yeah. It was the first one where you could control Tails and he could fly.
So that's 2 first then for the Master System Game Gear. It was Tails' first introduction, and also it's the first game he could fly.
Yeah. Pretty much.
I'm only thinking that because this year is the 20th anniversary of Sonic 3. 20th? That's a lie. 30th anniversary of Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles.
Yeah, Jesus.
And that means that Sonic Chaos was last year, was his 30th year, which if that's the first one he flew, then yeah, there's a lot of stuff going for the Master System.
Well, I wonder if it's the case of because it wasn't the complete money factory of the 16-bit, maybe the developers had more freedom to experiment, because them games definitely felt a lot more experimental than the 16-bit games, 100%, for better or for worse. Have you played was it Sonic Blast? Not to be confused with Sonic 3D Blast, even though it uses very similar aesthetics. Have you played it? Sonic Blast?
No, I don't think I have. There's another Sonic game I was going to bring up, which is not these. It's a different one. But go on, go through Sonic Blast.
It's awful. I think it must have been around the time Donkey Kong Country was released, and everyone was into that big FMV sprites, and it is awful. It's horrendous. It looks worse than Sonic 1 on the Game Gear. It looks awful. Excuse me. It looks absolutely...
Well, I'm going to go back and play that one.
Oh, I wouldn't. I really, really wouldn't. It is a diabolical thing. But it looks... That's confusing because it looks the same as... You know how Sonic 3D looks with the characters beefy? It's like that, but imagine that as 2D sprites on a Game Gear level that are like about 3 times as much screen size as like the Sonic characters in the other Game Gear games, and it feels really floaty, and it just doesn't work. It's an awful awful game.
God, this is oh god, I think that's probably one of the first cases then we're talking about whether. Well, no, to be fair, Spinball did. I was going to say where they got the physics wrong.
Yeah. I mean, there's a Sonic Spinball on the 8-bit as well. That's got its.
Which is.
I've not played it, but
it's not as good as the 16-bit.
No, doesn't it start differently? It's got a bit, but hasn't even that got a different introduction that is better? When it's got Sonic,
it's got
Sonic's holding onto the plane at the start, and
yeah, it does. It's slightly different. I mean, the levels are relatively the same, so you still got things like the machine, and you've got toxic caves and things like that. But it's such a stripped down game.
Yeah, I think frame rate bogs it down, doesn't it? I think.
Yeah, I mean, but then it's the same thing with Mean Bean Machine. But then I suppose with Mean Bean, you don't really need to do a lot because Mean Bean was essentially Puyo Puyo, and it's a good game in its own right. But but Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Triple Trouble, and that you're talking about Sonic, Spinball. You are talking about stripped down versions of 16-bit. So the sounds things you're saying there, Sonic Blast is a stripped down version of Sonic Flicky's Island or 3D Blast. Is it not?
That's what I'm telling you. Don't be confused by the name. It's got the exact same art style. It's got almost the exact same title. It is nothing to do with it. It's not the same storyline. It's nothing to do with it. It's a real oddity. I don't know what they were thinking. It's like they tried to squeeze one turd out before the Game Gear at the end of its life. Other games on there. There's the Two Tails games.
Not played those.
I've
played Drift.
Pardon?
I played Sonic Drift.
Oh yeah, of course, Drift and Drift. Drift 1 we never got over here until all these compilations. We always had Sonic Drift on our cover, and then when you boot up the game, it always said Sonic Drift 2. I never learned that firsthand, but I remember at the time reading about it in Sonic the comic, explaining why. Like people were saying, why does my Sonic Drift say Sonic Drift 2? And it's because the original one was never released. Similar to, Final Fantasy. Where they're called number 6, Final Fantasy 3. Just because none of the rest were released over here. And I'm glad they've stopped renaming things weirdly now. Or at least they don't do it as much. But I've played those games. Yeah, they're quite a laugh.
Like I said, I've got them on the collection, so I should probably go back and play them. Like I said, I know in my childhood years, I said definitely played the original few Sonics, like you said, Triple Trouble, Chaos 1 and 2, and Spinball. But yeah, I never really got beyond that because I think that was the point where Game Gear Master System in general was a dying console, as it were. I mean, to be fair, at that point, even the Mega Drive was on its knees a tiny bit, and they were just trying to keep it alive with the CD and the 32X. Well,
there's a big thing about that. I'm frustrated now because I haven't written down the title. But I mean, if we're moving out of this system, there's a couple of I've got Labyrinth, but I don't know if you've played Sonic Labyrinth or not. It's not. It's a Sonic game in name only, really. He gets his speech. He gets his shoes stolen at the start and given heavy shoes, so he can't run, and then he's got to walk around the labyrinth. So
that sounds like they were struggling with some physics, and they used that as an excuse to get away with it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's actually coming back quickly to like Lost Classics, Sonic Erasure. Did you ever play that?
No, what's that one?
That was like it was on the Mega Drive in Japan, I think only, but it came installed into Mega Drives. So you turn it on with no game and you play Sonic Erasure, but it's effectively columns with two little Sonic characters, and then again it's more just a picture of Sonic in a game, which Sega did during that time.
It sort of reminds me, like if you were to go to like a pinball machine in a real life pinball machine in the old days, it's like named after a particular franchise or an IP, and even though it's still essentially just a ball and pinball machine. Yeah.
So,
did you ever play Sega Sonic the Hedgehog?
I did on emulator, and have you played it?
Yes. Now, it was down at my aunt's about, where are we now? How old am I now? 35 years, no, wherever, 30 years ago it must have been. 30 years ago, maybe a bit less. And it was down at my aunt's in Bournemouth, and we went to this sort of arcade place, and there were two things that were there. I think it was very Sega orientated, because Sega's always been big in the arcade market. One was this game, Sega Sonic the Hedgehog, and there was these two other characters which I'd never seen before, and no one I don't think we'd ever see again, ironically, until Sonic Mania Encore, which was
It's
you know
Ray,
what?
it's Ray
I
the
actually had
Squirrel and
it's
Mighty.
Ray and Mighty, Mighty Armadillo, Ray the Squirrel, and Sonic,
Mighty
and it
came
was.
back in Chaotix.
Yes, that's true. Actually, it was part of the Chaotix Club crew, as it were. But yeah, I mean, but like I said, no one got a 32X. It never came back. But yeah, and that was my introduction to that. And then I didn't think of it again until it came back in Encore, and I thought, I remember those characters. And he went all the way back, and I thought, where do I know them from? So I searched out the game, and it was Sega Sonic the Hedgehog, and that's what I played in the arcades. And then at the same time as well, and I think I told you about this months ago, is in this same arcade you had the Sonic popcorn thing. So you play the game, you turn a wheel, and the popcorn came out, and it's essentially an image of, I think it's Sonic or Tails making popcorn or something like that, and it pops out, and you have to spin the wheel to get it done, and it was interactive in terms of, to be honest, I don't think you needed to spin the wheel. I think it was just fun for kids to do, waiting for popcorn to be made. But I looked this up everywhere, and I know it existed because I know we got the popcorn.
Yeah,
but everywhere I looked,
exist. Sonic Popcorn Maker does exist. I think I've downloaded it on emulator, but I've never played it. I have played that other one. Is it called Doki Doki Panic?
Doki Doki Panic, yes, the original. That won't be Doki Doki. Oh no, because Doki Doki Panic is the original. The original Mario 2.
Oh, sorry, I'm getting my wires crossed. It's called something, and it's got Sonic, and he's in a little car. And he's a police officer. So there's that game, and there's another one when he's in a space rocket, and you're like flying a rocket in space with him. They were like two very child-orientated Japanese arcade games from like
Waku Waku Sonic Patrol Car.
Yeah, that's the one.
I've just looked it up.
And I have played the Sega Sonic, but only on emulator. And I don't know if you can remember how your arcade console was when you played it, or like what the interface is, but it's a ball. It's a ball on that.
Yes, it's a ball control.
And you can't emulate. Not with a keyboard and a mouse or a controller anyway, because people have tried. You can't replicate that. So when you play it on emulator, your characters just walk. So
God, that's trouble.
Yeah, so that upsets it. I mean, maybe other people have got them running around in it, but I couldn't get my characters out of walking. I completed it anyway because it's an arcade game. On emulator, you just keep saying you had money, so you just get to the end. So I've done that. So I've got to the end of it, and it's insane. It's the first Sonic game to have an ice level. So I know it's got that going for it.
Really, what year did that come out?
I think it came out 92, maybe. It came out very soon after, 92 or 90. Definitely not 93. I don't think. I could be mistaken. I haven't got it written down.
Well, no, but even so, that's still a long way before Ice Cap.
Yeah, it was before Ice Cap. Yeah, but then, like I said, so
did not know that.
So we were talking about the end of the Game Gear and the Mega Drive life cycle, and like Sonic 3D was very much a last hurrah when the video game landscape was going through such a massive change, going from 2D to 3D. They called it Sonic 3D, but it wasn't really 3D. It was isometric 2D game. To give it its best, there was a version of it on the Saturn, which is the superior version. Yeah, which is the better version. It's got more effects, hasn't it, on it, and the special stages are different. I don't know if that's the version that tends to be on, like compilations these days, or if they tend to have the Genesis version.
I think when I last played it, which might have been on the Sonic Mega Collection, I think it was still the 16-bit for the Mega Drive.
Yeah. But that was the last hurrah, and then it feels like they were building up to go full 3D with their Sonic, and it never happened for the Saturn, which was very peculiar, seeing as they leaned. I mean, we've been talking for an hour and 20 minutes now, and all these games they've released in the span of 6 years, because I think 3D was 96.
I mean, it was.
And then nothing.
Because it came Yeah, because I think Sega Saturn, I think, was about at the same time as I'm going to get it wrong now. I think it was the same time as Nintendo 64, and I think then it would have been the first PlayStation.
Yeah, well, PlayStation came out, I think, 94 or 95.
Oh, so right at the end of the Mega Drive's life
Yeah,
cycle. Well,
yeah.
right
So,
at the end when Sonic 3 came out, really.
well, yeah, because Saturn was the first mainstream video game console to use CDs. Or, well, Mega CD was actually
Yes.
still a lie, but then that's the
Yes.
add-on to the thing. And then you've got your Saturn. And regarding Sonic properties, there was one they were going to do. I can't remember the title of it for the life of me. It never happened. I've seen some footage of it online. Isn't there something saying that one of the lead developers died or something during the making and it never happened?
Yeah, because it was one of those weird things where Saturn was the only one with an original Sonic game, and I think I did have something in development. It just never happened, and which they thankfully rectified with the Dreamcast.
Yeah. I mean, sticking with the Saturn for a little bit longer. We won't talk on it too long.
Yeah.
There was the Sonic R. They released that.
Oh, the racing
that was
game.
The racing one. So that was 3D. I know on the arcade during that time period they had Sonic the Fighters.
Oh God, I remember that game. I have played that one.
That when you get that on the collections now on the Sonic Gems collection, it's on. So I played that, and that had some random characters pop up in it. That had a polar bear, didn't it? I can't remember if it had Mighty. It had another new Metal Sonic. There was a new Death Egg, and there was 8 Chaos Emeralds for whatever reason.
But it's that period though where I'm gonna sound like such a fiend here. Well, it was the time where everyone loved the PlayStation because it was in 3D. Everyone loved the Nintendo 64, even though it had its own issues because it was a cartridge based still. It didn't go to CDs.
Yeah.
And everyone thought, 3D was fantastic. And I must admit, I looked at those early games and I thought, nah, we need to wait a generation.
Mean that first round of 3D games has in no way stood the test of time as well as the sprite work that was coming before it. Like the 16-bit games are not, maybe gameplay wise they're not as strong as you remember, but the visuals never disappoint. And even the NES has its charms, but yeah,
it does. I mean, but yeah, I mean, don't get. I knew people, you and I knew the same people who had a PlayStation, the original one, and played it, and it just. And don't get me wrong, there's still some good games in it. Things like this, I would come off topic, but there's a reason we'll come back to that. We'll lead on to when you play games like Destruction Derby. I'd even say Tomb Raider. It was very blocky.
I'm a big Tomb Raider fan, so nostalgia probably makes my opinion.
And I think the other reason why I'm thinking of Tomb Raider because, of course, it's now available again as the anniversary, the trilogy, and then when you look how blocky it is. Very square, I know shoulder pads were an 80s thing, but I feel like Lara Croft and other characters kept shoulder pads for another decade, pretty because of how they designed it. And I think even the Saturn had that because it was one of the first
Saturn,
3D consoles.
When they built the Saturn up, because obviously Sega was built, I mean, they've always been a hardware company, first and foremost.
Yeah.
They just sort of tried their luck and they hit on a winning recipe with the Mega Drive. And so that sort of propelled them into game development more than the hardware side. But they designed that without realising just how much of a game changer 3D games would be. And so they bought it to make the best 2D games possible. And then they released it and everyone was like, we don't want 2D games no more. 2D games are lame. That's sort of how it was at the time. No one wanted anything. If it was 2D, it was for children. If it was for adults, it was 3D.
Well, that's the thing, though, because when you look at Sonic Mania, it looks like a game where if it came out with the Saturn, it would have worked.
Yeah. I think it's slightly. Is it slightly better than Saturn, or it's the technology in Sonic Mania fit. It's better than the Mega Drive, but not quite as good as the Saturn. I know they've deliberately limited themselves when they were making it.
They definitely did, especially when you look at other games they've made as a separate thing since. But Sonic, it was meant to sort of hit that sort of benchmark, wasn't it?
So I guess it was supposed to be better technology than Sonic 3, but then maybe not as good as Saturn. It was sort of what they were looking at in how it plays. But then they had Sonic Jam. I mean, are you aware of Sonic Jam, what that was?
Yeah, that's the compilation game, isn't it? That's the one I think you as a 3D Sonic, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a 3D Sonic level. And so I remember seeing footage of that and thinking that was part of an entire game. And obviously that never, ever happened. Tragic, really, and cost them big, really, because if you've built your entire empire on one character and then you go a whole generation without a mainstream title, you've just got a couple spin-offs here and there. You know, they've already had a lot of expensive misfires with the Mega CD and then the 32X.
Well, did you know that there was something in development where it was going to combine? Essentially, it wasn't going to be a Mega CD and a 32X. I read this somewhere where they were going to essentially combining the two together, and it's going to be called the Neptune.
Oh, okay, no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I read this somewhere. It was like a really thinner version of the Saturn. And obviously it didn't happen because as you said, they were never originally. You know, now you said that they weren't originally going into consoles. It just happened, which kind of makes sense because they really, especially when you look at the fact rather than move to the next generation,
there used to be arcade machine makers. You know, like they used to the original Donkey Kong originally shipped on Sega hardware.
Yeah.
You know, and it's insane to think it now, but that's what they were.
Yeah, but yeah, and I think that's the thing. And then because they weren't expecting, as you said, they were basically trying to keep the Mega Drive as long as possible because it was their cash cow. They didn't seem to have had the, and I guess it kind of goes back to what I was saying about Sonic CD, where they were more conservative and use a formula which worked. Same thing with the Mega Drive. We know it works. Let's just add stuff to it rather than make a new console. But by that point, if I remember correctly,
I mean, it's like they fell into that same trap that Nintendo fell into in the 80s, where they had something that worked, so they just threw loads of crap at it and hope people would keep buying. But then, I mean, it's definitely a way bigger story than we've got time for now. The PlayStation game. And then, that changed. That is what changed everything. And again, that was another Nintendo loss because that could have been the Nintendo 64. But Nintendo said no, we're going to set the cartridges. So Sony said fine.
Yes,
we'll do our own console.
I mean, Nintendo's something I would love us to talk about because, as you said, there's so much into it, especially with the hardware history. But then after obviously the Saturn, which Sega had, which ultimately failed, they then basically gave one last throw of the dice with the Dreamcast.
Yeah, which kind of felt doomed from the big off because Dreamcast came out, everyone was waiting for PS2. And that's all we've got time for today in our Sonic the Hedgehog retrospective. Please join us again next week at Mr. Connoisseur's Movies and Games, where we continue our discussion of Sonic the Hedgehog's foray into 3D proper and how that goes for him. Thanks a lot for listening. Bye.